I'm turned off by what is called religion in our nation, and I'm turned off by a lot of what is called Christianity or the church. I find it very repulsive. I really do, and I'm not trying to be unkind. I find it repulsive and distorted, and I find it a very degraded reality upon which the original was built. And let me give you an example. The study of the Bible is not boring. It's boring if it's taught by religious people who don't understand it. Then and there's no pun intended, it's boring as hell if it's taught by people that don't understand it. So let me give you an example. The story of Noah and the flood is basically taught by most churches as if it was an allegory about this funky old man in a beard, and he built a cute little wooden ark, and these cute little animals come into the ark, and God floods the world for whatever reason they decide to come up with, and the animals come in 2 by 2. It's a trite, cute little stupid story that doesn't have real appeal to adults. I mean, it makes a great cartoon for kids, but it doesn't have real appeal for adults. Now, if you throw that in the garbage, that kind of story, and that's what I would do, because if somebody taught me the story of Noah, and I was taught the story of Noah in those terms for most of my life, and I feel like I was ripped off. And then I discovered one day that the story of Noah is the most mind-blowing tour de force that is so beyond any science fiction movie that it will blow the roof of your mind off. The story of Noah is a DNA digital holographic story. It deals with a planetary infection of the human DNA because there are fallen angels coming in from another dimension who actually came to Earth on Mount Hermon in the area, by the way, where Phoenicia is. And if you look at the back of the dollar bill again, you see that bird is not an eagle, it's a phoenix, and it's a phoenix because it's based on the term Phoenicia. And Phoenicia was the general geographic region where these fallen angels descended from heaven on Mount Hermon. So there's a meaning in the phoenix and the Phoenician civilization. By the way, the capital of Phoenicia was Cydonia, which just happens to have a mirror city on Mars. Now, in case you think that's far-fetched, and I don't have time to get into it now, Aleister Crowley was very aware of Cydonia and its relationship between Phoenicia and Mars. And there's a reason why he was very aware of that, but I'll have to put a comma on that. Back to the story of Noah. So these interdimensional beings come down from planet Earth. And by the way, we are right on the precipice of a revolution in human consciousness that is going to turn the world upside down. Because all these movies like Prometheus that Ridley Scott directed, and all the ancient astronaut type stories and movies are really paving the way for what I believe is going to happen very soon, which will be an alien genesis. I believe the traditional Darwinian theory of evolution will be radically modified because it's an unworkable theory the way it's presented now. And the accepted belief, and I believe it's coming very soon, will be that planet Earth was seeded by aliens billions of years ago, and that in the manner of the movie Prometheus, the real genesis or origins of mankind is extraterrestrial. So let's just put a comma on that. Now, going back to Noah, we have these interdimensional beings landing on Mount Hermon, and they are impregnating human women, and they are giving birth to a hybrid race called the Nephilim. And one of the characteristics of the Nephilim is they're giants, and they're very intelligent, and they have a grasp of science and technology that is way beyond the people of that time period. Now, before the flood, the population of planet Earth was probably at least 3 billion people. Before the flood, I believe there was an ancient civilization called Atlantis, and it had high technology. The Nazis believed in what was called the island of Thule, and they also have the story of Hyperborea, and their legends, the Nazi occult legends, were that a star civilization came down to Earth, impregnated or seeded the planet, thus the master race, and there was cataclysms, and the master race had to retreat into Antarctica and other places into the center of the Earth, or at least beneath the Earth, the giant under-the-earth civilization called Hyperborea. And Thule, an island which was submerged during the Great Flood, as was Atlantis, there was supposedly a high percentage. First of all, there was tremendous technology that was beyond man's ability to develop. And we still see the remnants of those ancient monolithic structures that testify to advanced technology, like the Incan ruins and the Mayan ruins and the pyramid structures and so on and so forth. These are evidence of advanced civilizations prior to the flood. So prior to the flood, there's this interbreeding and widespread contamination of human DNA. And God, when he created man and Adam and Eve, he created man in his own image, which means God gave Adam and Eve his DNA, a specific DNA coding system. Lucifer, who's a fallen angel, who's led a rebellion against God with 1/3 of the fallen angels, broke the life force in Eden by introducing the death force. And what pulled that cosmic trigger to release the death force was when the serpent tempted Adam and Eve to disobey the word of God and promised them that they shall be as gods. So you have the human race contaminated with this DNA. And when you read the story, let's say, of Joshua and Caleb and how they went in to fight the giants, well, people don't understand that the giants that they were going in to fight were cross-breeding Nephilim giants. They were the products of interspecies breeding between human women and fallen angels. And the worship of these ancient cultures, the Canaanites, the Jebusites, the Hittites, the Kezites, and you could go on and on and on, and they worshiped like Moloch, which is the same god they worship at the Bohemian Grove. The worship always consisted of the sacrifice of human babies on the burning hands of Moloch, which was a metallic statue heated up. They would burn their babies alive, and their worship consisted of sexual orgies, drug-taking, and drinking in the most perverse manner. Now, this wasn't just about partying. What that kind of worship does, that satanic worship, is that opens up a portal in a different dimension, entrance of interdimensional beings that are allowed to enter the earth when that kind of perversity is indulged in. And so when Joshua and Caleb went in to invade the land, these were not just, tall men who were strong. They were Nephilim. Now, it gets even heavier than that. What are our kids being bombarded with now with the Illuminati music videos? Hyper-perverse sexuality, S&M, group sex, bondage gear, Illuminati symbols, open Satan worship. It's hardcore occult porn music videos. Our kids are being hit with that with stroboscopic intensity with the music videos. What that is the indoctrination of children into satanic worship. The same exact satanic worship that occurred in Canaan with the Canaanites, the Kezites, Hittites, the Perizzites, and so on and so forth. And so what God did is he said, enough's enough, and he decided to wipe out the corrupted DNA, and he did it with a flood. And so he brought Noah and his family because their DNA was not corrupted. And he brought 2 by 2 of the animals, and it wasn't just some cute, dumb story with 2 rabbits and 2 giraffes and 2 cows. It wasn't some stupid story. If you look at it carefully, it's all about genetics. It's all about being able to reproduce. So God floods the earth, and immediately after the earth is flooded, all the corrupted DNA is wiped out. And people say, well, why do you have to kill all the animals? Because these interdimensional beings cannot inhabit the earth unless they have a physical host body. That's when Jesus would cast out a demon. The legion of demons begged him to send the demons into a group of pigs because they needed a host body. They didn't want to be just cast out of a man. They would settle for being able to inhabit an animal. Now that's very important because when you go back before the flood, the Watchers, or these fallen angels, were involved in very advanced genetic experimentation, and they were not only impregnating human women, but on a mass scale, they were impregnating animals. So when God institutes the Levitical laws, and he goes on at length about not having sex with animals and forbidding bestiality and forbidding women lying, with a horse like she would lie with a man and all that stuff. It's pretty graphic and specific. And it wasn't because the children of Israel were into some, really kinky sex. It was because the fallen angels or the interdimensional beings were having sex with animals. And that's the real story. So the flood wipes out the corrupted DNA, and then it starts all over again. But the story of Noah is a DNA, interdimensional being, genetic holographic story. It's mind-blowing. It's beyond the movie Prometheus by Ridley Scott. It's off the Richter scale. It would blow people's minds. Teenagers, young people would line up for 2 hours in a line if somebody would actually teach the story of Noah and quit censoring it and let it rip. Because there's this all-important thing that's happening now. Jesus Christ said these words. He said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Well, what did Jesus mean? He didn't just mean that the earth would be wicked and filled with violence, although that was part of it. What Jesus really meant when he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, was that Jesus was saying the fundamental thing that was happening in the days of Noah. And what was the fundamental thing? It was the interdimensional beings having sex with human women and producing Nephilim hybrids. That was the fundamental problem. Jesus said that fundamental problem will resurface again in the time period that approaches the nearness of his return. So when we see this explosion of transhumanism, discussion of the singularity, rumors of laboratories with animal, Nephilim, and DNA experimentation, people in the military community making references to Rosemary's Baby, and this whole rebirth in the Illuminati music video singing about Roman Zelensky, and the revisiting of Babylon working and all that stuff. This is not just a bunch of weird stuff. This is Jesus saying that the interspecies breeding, and that's what this whole UFO phenomenon is all about on a global level. This interspecies breeding is exploding again. Now, let me just say one thing, and this should go off in people's heads like a stick of dynamite. There's a pop music girl named Keisha. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's Kesha. And she's an open Satanist, and she does Illuminati music videos, and she sings in leather bondage gear, and her music videos have group sex and pretty deviant stuff, okay? But, and on one hand, people would almost want to laugh when I say this, because it's so vulgar, it's almost humorous. But she did a big interview with Rolling Stone magazine. I believe it was this month. And again, I can understand people laughing because it's so ludicrous at one extent, except it's tragic on the other hand. She has told Rolling Stone, and she tells her fans, which are in the millions, that her vagina is possessed. Now, she's got a fan base that starts with 6-year-old girls, and she's saying her vagina is possessed. And what does she mean by that? Well, then she goes into these stories about how she's having sexual relationships with demons and supernatural beings. This is exactly what Jesus Christ was talking about. While we're having this interview, there are who knows how many young girls and boys, and there's this resurgence of discussion of people who are having sexual relations, and I don't know what their numerical number is, who claim to be having sex with demonic, angelic, interdimensional beings. It's an epidemic. And this pop singer just came out and said it. I mean, and so, you know, the reaction to this is not to go hysterical and burn albums like they did in my generation, where they burned the Beatles albums.
Oh,
because if you burn the Beatles albums, yeah, you're going to make an idiot out of yourself, and it's going to be counterproductive. But just think about the words of Jesus Christ. Think about the story of Noah.